Hello everyone, Sabrina here from Scrappy Tales Crafts. Welcome back to my channel. Today I have a super long video for you guys featuring the new Horror Classics bundle. This is 10% off until Monday night. I wanted to make sure I got this video out for you guys because this will be the best offer for a very long time since this is a new collection. Then I'll be pairing it with the A7 pop-up shadow box book die set. The bundle was created to go with this pop-up. However, the elements in the bundle can be used standalone or on regular flat card designs as well. But I will be creating 4 books in today's video. And the 4 classics that I represented in the bundle are Frankenstein, Dracula, Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven, and then I added a spell book in just because I love witches. So those are the 4 designs I'll be creating today. I am going to show you how to make one book. I have a lot of tutorials on this book because, as I mentioned in my showcase video, the pop-up shadow box book die set is my favorite child. It is my favorite pop-up that we have brought out. So I will quickly go through this because it is a pretty long video as is. But basically, you have 2 long accordions for the long sides of the 5x7 card. So these accordions are 6 3/4 inches tall by 5 inches wide, and that is what the die will cut out for you. You'll need 2 of those, and then you'll cut 2 more and trim them down to 4.5. So you should have 2 short ends that are 4.5 by 5 and 2 long ends that are 6 3/4 by 5. Then with all 4 pieces, you're going to accordion fold them as you see me doing here. And that is a simple mountain valley fold. It's just like how we used to make fans back in elementary school, just folding up, flipping it around, folding up, flipping it around, folding it up until we get all the way to the end. Did that with all 4 pieces to have them nice and prepped. And then I'll take a long piece and a short one and kind of shove them together, creating a 90-degree angle. You're going to notice when you put these pieces together that the mountains and valleys align, and you can just shove them together and that will create one corner of your shadow box. To secure these 2 pieces together, I open up those 2 flaps that are loose. So I did the front, I'll do the same thing on the back. So I opened up those 2 flaps. There's one on the short end, one on the long end. It doesn't matter which one you open up first. You're just going to secure those flaps in the corners with a square of tape. It does not need to be perfect here. I just opt for about a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch square to put in that corner. I don't add any tape to the center part of the pages because I do want this to look like book pages and I don't want it to be super tight. I kind of want it to be fluffy towards the center. Then I'm going to take another long piece and again open up those flaps. There's one on the short end, one on the long end. I will stick a piece of tape in the corner, fold down one flap, then on top of the flap we just folded, I'll add another piece of tape and fold down the other flap. Again, it does not matter which flap you fold down first, as long as those are nice and secured on the front and on the back. This will ensure that your shadow box will stay together. So now I'm taking some more squares of tape. You can see I'm lining up those mountains and valleys. Once I see that they're all interlocked, I'll push them together. And it's so satisfying to assemble these shadow boxes. I have made so many of these that I can whip them out very quickly. And then we're just on to the final corner, connecting the short end to the long end on the top left corner. Going to add 4 more squares of tape here, opening up both flaps, putting 1 square of tape down, folding the flap down. On that flap, I'm going to add another piece of tape on top and then fold the other flap down on top, securing everything in place. And then I'll do the same thing on the back. So I did do that very quickly, and that is just because I have so many tutorials on this book. I even have a live where we made a book in real time. So definitely check that out if you are brand new to Scrappy Tales, or just check out some of my older videos on this book because I go at a much slower pace. I really wanted the focus of this video to be on our new Horror Classics bundle. Okay, so now I am adding some 1/4" tape to the front and back cover. So I cut this from the Shadowbox book die set. I cut 2 of them to create the front and back cover, and where I added the 1/4" tape, that will be the spine of the book. So on one of the covers, I added my double-sided tape on both of those 1/2" glue tabs on the left side, and then I took the other cover I cut and just laid the exact same score lines over each other. And then you can see as I open it that it does look like a book, and it opens from left to right. So make sure that you're adding your shadow box to the right side. Now I have my shadow box. I'm adding more 1/4" tape to one side of it. I'm also, on top of this tape, I will add some liquid glue because it's going to be a tight squeeze. I do want to wiggle it around until I'm happy with the placement, and there will be a tiny edge all the way around because this is a 1/4" smaller than my actual book cover. So I'm making sure everything's lined up nice, and then I'll give it a nice press down. And that is my completed book. It's pretty simple, and I've just made so many of these. Once you make one, you can really make as a dozen of them very easily. So we're gonna start off with Frankenstein, and I did all of my die cutting beforehand. So I have them in these little clear bins. I really like these for storing my projects. My preferred way of crafting is to kind of get all the die cutting out of the way, and then once I have like 4 or 5 of these clear boxes full of projects, I will take one whole day just to film and create them. So the cover plate, you can see I cut from black cardstock, and it's kind of hard because it's black to see all of the etched lines that it creates, but it does have every single detail on it so that I know where to place all of my tiny pieces. So I'm actually following the colors that are on the back of the packaging that I colored digitally. So I cut the whole base from black, and then I recut the base from blue, yellow, and red, just these little quadrants, to create this colorful, almost comic book style design. So the red background will be behind Frankenstein, the dark blue will be the castle scene, and the yellow will be the mad scientist scene. And again, it's kind of hard to see on camera, but once you start adding all your layers, you will start to see this cover plate come to life. And there is like 40 to 50 dies in this one set. There are so many layering pieces to it, and it's kind of up to you to decide how many layers you would want to add to this. I opted to go with every single layer. And for me, I found it easiest to just start working from my pile. I tend to grab the large elements and work my way down. And I'm not focusing on one quadrant. However, you can do that if you want to take it, piece by piece to make sure you're not missing anything. But I thought, let's eliminate these large pieces and then start getting to the details. I am doubling up most of the larger elements on this just to make them stand out, and I bring all of my samples to consumer shows. They get touched a lot and handled a lot. So I have just, for all of my cards lately, have been tripling and doubling up almost every single element. And I use heavy cardstock. I've just really like the weight of my cards now. They look very substantial, and I definitely think it's worth, especially with sentiments, the time to really layer them up with multiple die cuts. So Frankenstein, I cut from a heavyweight dark green, and then on top I layered a light green, and I offset the 2 colors. So the word Frankenstein has this 2-toned, almost like block letter style to it, which again fits the comic book style. So again, I'm just kind of working from the large elements. Now I'm kind of down to the medium-sized ones. And I thought it'd be a good time to start layering up Frankenstein. He was what I was most excited to paper piece. And I did use 4 shades of green for his face. And then there are some black pieces like his hair, his little scar, his mouth. I cut his eyes from white. And his, I don't know what that is on his neck, but I cut those from silver as well as the stitches. So there is a little bit of some subtle shine on each of the 3 segments of this cover plate. And here is where you can really see how this comes to life. I absolutely love this cover plate. It's probably my favorite from the release, just because there's so much detail on it. And as a designer, it's really fun to try different styles of art. I do not have a set style. I don't know if I ever will. I wish I did, because then people would know, hey, this is Sabrina's art, but I haven't found that style yet, so I'm kind of just experimenting with some different designs, and maybe I will stick with that. Maybe that is my style, is that it all looks very different. But I definitely, for this collection, did a more spooky look. There are a couple cutesy images. The last book I make is definitely more cutesy. But the main horror novels, I really tried to stick with horror. I didn't want to make them cutesy. I do think, though, that they are more spooky. I don't think they're scary at all. But this is definitely my style of Halloween card making. And if you hear Maverick, he has yet again joined me for another video, this time in voice. Yes, Maverick. I'm sure you guys can hear him now. All right, so the lightning I cut from Silver Mirror. There's a little tree on this segment. I cut from black. I also cut the castle from black. And I made a mistake with the castle. I should have layered gold behind the windows before gluing the castle down, but it was too late. And I did not want to risk ripping this entire design. So I painstakingly paper pieced every single window with gold mirror cardstock, and you'll see that once I get to it. But I'm going to keep going with everything that I have cut here. And, oh, I guess I stopped and I cut those windows out from gold. So this is an inlay. It was not an intentional inlay, but I ended up getting the result I wanted, so that's good. This is sped up to 2 times the speed, so I think this took at least 30 minutes to completely paper piece. I did cut some parts of it out, such as, recutting these windows, but it's definitely time consuming with this many detail layers, but I definitely think it's worth it by the time it's all finished. It doesn't even really look like a die cut because there's just so many elements to it. All right, so I'm just gonna add the last couple windows to that castle. Sorry, my head gets in the way here. And then I'm gonna finish up the bottom scene. So I'm going to add his pants. I was really excited that I was able to add the little mad scientist scene to this. And this bottom part has all the tiny vials and beakers on the cabinet. Some of the pieces I didn't even bother to cut. You can use a black pen or a fine liner. However, I did include every single piece. So if you are dedicated, you can definitely cut everything out. All right, so now I'm going to add the straps. So I think all that's left to paper piece are the elements on that cabinet. And then I can move on to creating the interior pieces. And the idea with this bundle set was to create a cover plate for each classic novel and a coordinating accessory set to decorate the inside of the books. So for Frankenstein, because this was the largest cover plate of all 4 designs, I did make his accessory piece smaller, and I went with a tombstone with Frankenstein's arm coming out of the dirt. I feel like that's very reminiscent, and I also knew that you can use the elements from the cover plate also on the inside. So the tombstone I did not use for Frankenstein. I'm actually going to use that tombstone for my Raven card, which you'll see later. But I opted to actually use his face from the cover plate on the inside. I did want to give you some other ideas than what you would probably initially think to do with these sets. And I thought it would be fun to recreate another Frankenstein. I love the shades of green that I chose. And this mirror is from the Nevermore, or the Raven accessory set. So I am mixing and matching for a lot of these books. They all work together really well, and they're all sized to decorate the inside of the book. So this mirror is actually A2 size because the opening inside the shadow box is much smaller. So this will be the focal point on the inside, perfectly sized. The mirror has skulls on the left and right side, but I opted to just leave the mirror black, just so that Frankenstein was really the main focal point on my card. So I have all of my elements ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and start assembling my book. So I decided that I wanted white behind my decorated cover plate. I just felt like white was going to make everything pop. So I maybe should have made a white book here, but it's totally fine. I just cut a white panel to the same size as my cover, glued that down, and then on top of that, I will add my cover plate. So these plates are a little bit smaller than 5x7, so you will have a border all the way around. I'm just using some double-sided tape here. I'm also going to add a little bit of glue. And there is quite a bit of dimension on all those layering pieces. And here I'm showing the mistake I made. I originally thought I wanted pattern paper on the inside, but as I was assembling it, I just wasn't feeling the paper, and I also wanted to tie in the green, red, and blue that was on the cover. So I removed the pattern paper I originally had taped down and replaced it with green. And you can see it's a bit of a mess because I did use liquid glue and pulled that up, but the green covers it completely. And for the right side, instead of pulling up the pattern paper, I'm just going to glue this red rectangle on top. I'm having some trouble with my glue here. Keeps getting clogged. And I did create a blue frame, which will go over the black frame on the shadow box. And I did add acetate behind it. I wanted this to look like a little encasing, like something you'd see at a museum. So the idea was this to look like it was a picture frame on the wall behind glass. And to float my Frankenstein oval mirror, I'm adding 2 acrylic sticks on the left and right side of my book pages. I added glue in the area that will overlap the pages of the book on the left and right side, and then I added glue on top of the acrylic sticks in the center, and that allowed me to glue my oval frame right on top of that, so it looks like it's floating and it's set further back. Then I'm going to use these spider webs and glue them a little bit higher up on the pages of the book in the right corner and the bottom left. And I thought that that drew the eye in nicely. It added a little bit more dimension on the inside. I cut these from the Halloween Essentials die set. This was one of our very first Halloween sets, and it's very useful. In a lot of my cards on my latest product showcase video, I used this set because it also includes spiders and bats. So the silver bats I'm going to add on top of the acetate frame are also from the Halloween Essentials. Here I'm making sure to remove all of the static and dust, and then I will close that up. And then over to the left, I added another mirror with a yellow oval in the center, as well as a sentiment and a silver castle. And this will just give me an area to write a message. I don't actually mail these cards out, but I like to show you guys opportunities to write a message if you do mail these yourself. I honestly use these books as home decor, and every year for every Halloween collection I have a new set of decor, and then once I take everything down, it goes with me to consumer shows for people to see in person. So it's very rare I actually mail out a card, especially these books, because they do take a lot of time. So you can see I did drop my bat with the glue on it right onto the center of the acetate. So I took a baby wipe and just quickly wiped that off. Then I added 2 silver bats on the right side and 2 black glitter bats on the inside cover page. Okay, so now we're moving on to Dracula, and because I just showed you how to create the book, these will move a little bit faster because I'm just going to show the decoration. So for Dracula, I'm using the main cover plate, the Dracula accessories, and I will also pull in that mirror again from the Raven accessory set. So from the main Dracula cover plate, you get this beautiful frame that you can honestly use on its own for a lot of traditional style books. So if you're doing a birthday card on the book with some of our products from the spring collection, I think this frame would work beautifully with those products. And I cut that from gold, and I'm gluing that straight onto my black book. And I also included the die that cuts the inner portion of that frame, but it's slightly smaller, so it will leave a black edge on the inside of the frame, which I thought was really pretty. So I continued the gold and glued that right to the center. And this card has a lot of gold mirror cardstock. I was going for a very gothic Dracula's castle kind of vibe, almost gaudy. So I really went all out with this gold. I'm usually a proponent for less is more when it comes to like mirror and glitter cardstock, but I pushed myself to really go all in with the gold, and I'm really glad that I did because I achieved the look I was going for. In the center of the book, instead of putting Dracula that's on the cover plate, I thought I would do a little scene with the book title instead. And I feel like just a coffin and Dracula's hand would convey that enough. And then I'm going to actually put Dracula from the cover plate on the inside. So I wanted to show you that you can definitely use elements that were supposed to be on the cover in the inside, and then the elements that are used to decorate the inside could also be used to decorate the outside. You definitely do not have to stick with the layout that I put on my cover plates. So this coffin has multiple layers. So I did some black accents and then just a small bit of gold there in the center. And I went with a dark, deep red coffin, and I cut the text, Dracula and Bram Stoker, from a brighter red. I thought it'd be nice to have 2 tones. And the title wasn't popping out enough for me, so I did take a black Dracula and kind of offset it behind the red. Same thing like I did with the Frankenstein, and I really like that look. I am also going to stack it up with a couple extra die cuts because you guys know that is my favorite thing to do. It adds a lot of pretty dimension. And then I have my hand that looks like it is waking up from the coffin. I think that's really cute. And then I added a couple little bats to kind of fill in the rest of the scene. So I like how that looks. I'm going to go ahead and glue everything together. And then I cut his little cuff on his sleeve from that same bright red color. So I just went ahead and added that. And I thought about adding some black pearls to this. I don't remember if I do or not. I'll go ahead and add the author's name, again, stacking up the die cuts. I do a lot of the stacking off camera before I even start filming. A lot of my die cuts are already pre-assembled. So just going to add one more bat at the bottom. And then here I'm deciding if I want to add the pearls or not. I am going to stack up the bats with one more layer. Majority of the time I stack 2 heavyweight die cuts together. But for text, I usually do 3 layers of die cuts. So here are the pearls. And if you buy the bundle, the classic horror bundle, you do get 4 sets of embellishments that each coordinate with the classic novel. So you can use those instead. And those are added for free for buying the bundle while supplies last. And Dracula's embellishment mix is red and black, so that would be perfect for this card design. So I did end up adding a couple pearls to this, and I thought to really give it that classic novel look, a key hanging from a ribbon felt right. I love books that still have ribbons on the inside. I think that is just such a cute touch. And I also saw Bibiana was a guest designer for us during our book collection, and she had the key hanging from one of her books, and I just knew for Dracula it would be really cute to have that. So what I did was I cut the key, and the key comes with the A7 pop-up shadow box book die set. There's also 2 really pretty frames and book corners that you can put on the inside, and this key. So I cut the key from red and I layered it onto some gold cardstock and cut around just so that it was more substantial. Then I glued it on the back side of the same gold paper, and I'm cutting it from the back side so that when this is flipped, there will be gold on the flipped side where I can add another key. So there's a key on both sides. If this wiggles around, I wanted you to see a key on either side of it. Did stack it up with a couple black layers, and then the final one there is red. And this is where I realized I should have waited to glue that second layer of gold because I forgot to add the ribbon in between. So I'll have to repeat the process again. I added my gold ribbon, glued it again on the back side of the gold cardstock, and cut around it. So this key is very thick, but I think that's fine because it's going to be moving around a lot. Alright, so here I'm trying to figure out, because I've never done this, I want to see how this will be glued inside, and the ribbon I chose frayed really bad. It didn't matter what scissors I used, so the only thing I could do with this ribbon was to burn the ends. Basically, that's just going to seal the threads back together. You just have to be careful with this. I did not want to do this because fire really freaks me out, but that did work very well. The frayed edges sealed together, and now I'm gluing it to the inside of the spine, that the glue wasn't going to be strong enough, so I am adding a strip of double-sided tape here. And that will give me that instant adhesion, and then on top of it I will add some more glue because that will be more of my permanent adhesion. And I really like the gold on the inside of the book as well. This was just some Christmas ribbon I've had for years. So then I closed up the book, and then you can see that that just hangs on the spine. I love how that looks. So to decorate the inside, it's fairly simple. I cut another frame that was on the cover twice. So there'll be one on the left and one on the right. Again, really embracing that gold. And then I cut another mirror from gold that's going to go in the center of the frames, and then the oval in the center of the mirror I cut from a white cardstock. On the back of the shadow box, I'm adding some solid red. I definitely wanted this to be gold with touches of red. I'm going to add another white oval to this mirror. And then, just like I did with Frankenstein, I am going to add Dracula to the mirror. I originally, when I started this video, my idea was to do a mirror in all 4 books, but I had different ideas as I was going, so I changed my mind. However, you can do a set of 4 books with the Raven, the Dracula, the witches, and Frankenstein with that mirror, and that would be a really cool set of cards to gift. Alright, so you saw there that I cut Dracula from the oval, just so that he will line up perfectly on top. But you can see, because there was like a castle engraved on his cape, that there was a little piece at the bottom that cut off because the oval overlapped that cut line. So I will kind of maneuver that and fix it a little bit later, but first I'm going to stack up Dracula with 2 layers of black, and then I'll just go ahead and start paper piecing him. So I cut his face from cream. Now I'm adding his hair. I have my little box of die cuts I'm pulling from. The moon was cut from gold. And then here's the castle, and this is where I realized, okay, I need to cover that red area. I was hoping that the windows would cover that area, but it doesn't. That was what ended up cutting off. So I had to paper piece a tiny bit of red under there, and then I trimmed up my castle. Also had to glue that piece on the castle back. And then there are even some tiny clouds and bats on his cape, so I'm adding those, and I just love the amount of detail on this image. So I'm now also adding the eyes that I cut from white, his eyebrow, and also his eyelid I cut from black. I didn't bother with the pupil. I honestly probably lost it, so I used a fine liner to draw in his pupil. Here I'm adding his eyelid, and I think adding that eyelid really helps his eyes stand out more. Also cut his mouth from black, and there's a teeny tiny fang that I cut from white that I glued for his tooth. Alright, so he's ready to go. I now have everything for the inside of my card. I can go ahead and start to glue everything down. I'm just adding the little bats here. So first, I will add the frame on top of the shadow box, and this is going to be the same size as that shadow box frame because the box is smaller. But you still won't see it from the outside because the front cover is larger than this frame. Alright, then I will add my Dracula on the inside. Just going to glue him on the left and right side of the pages, so I didn't need to use acrylic sticks this time. And then I'll glue the same frame over to the left. And I just really love this frame. I can't wait to use it for Christmas. Alright, just adjusting it because it is pretty dainty. And a lot of these books that I made in my recent showcase video, I kept a lot of the original book color for several of my designs, which I usually always cover that shadow box frame, or I'll completely cover the left side with a pattern paper or a different color. But I really embraced a lot of black because most of my books were black. Alright, the center oval for this mirror is going to be red, and I just think that's the perfect amount of red for the inside. And that finishes off the Dracula book. So here I'm just showing you the completed card. And here's another book that my mom made, this time more red with gold accents, and I thought that they looked really pretty together as a set. And then here are some close-up photos. And now we're moving on to the Raven, which, based on the showcase video, it seems like the Raven might be the favorite of the 4 in the bundle. And I really love how this card turned out. I think it's masculine too. I went with neutral browns, which again is a color scheme I usually never go for. But I wanted to replicate the colors that were on the back of the packaging. So I will be almost to a T recreating the packaging that's on the Raven cover plate, exactly the same. So I did cut the tattered frame from cream cardstock and then also this super light beige. I couldn't decide what color I wanted for the front, so I figured I'll use one on the front and then the other one will go on the inside of the book. But I am distressing both of them with a brown ink here. And I love that this almost looks like a little Wanted poster once you add the crow to the center. It's really cool. So just using baby wipe to clean off the ink that's on my glass mat. And again, I have my container of die cuts, so I'm just going to lay out my pieces here. And I did change up the composition slightly from the packaging. I decided to do the Raven and Edgar Allan Poe stacked on top of each other and put the crow in the bottom right. Also taking the spooky tree from the haunted house die set pop-up, I just cut that up so that I had more branches to work with. And that dirt that I put under the skull is the dirt from the Frankenstein add-on, the tombstone. I cut another crow from black, and that way I can add a little bit more color to this Raven. So I did cut the base from a super dark gray, and now I'm just going to add black to its wing. I opted for dark brown text here. Off camera, I stacked up my die cuts. I do decide later on to change the color of Edgar Allan Poe. The die also has the New York 1945 label that's usually at the bottom of classic books, so you can add that instead of the dirt. But I did cut the dirt from black, and I think that just helps ground this large image. So I'm going to go ahead now and paper piece the rest of this die cut. There is an eyeball, which I cut from white, and then I will use a fine liner pen to draw in the pupil. There is a layer for his feet that I cut from black, and also his beak I cut from black. You can see there I added his pupil. And the skull that he stands on is one of my favorite die cuts from the entire collection. There is several of these layering skulls mixed in, and I just think that looks so gothic and cool. I could see myself using that skull on tons of Halloween designs. So because the skull is solid, I did have to carefully pull up the bird's feet so that I can glue the feet on top of the skull. All right, and then I did paper piece the branches behind. Cut those from a dark brown. And out of all of the cover plate dies, this one's definitely the easiest to paper piece. The image is very large and there's not a ton of detailed layers to it. The skull is also a layering skull, so it's very simple to figure out the 3 layers. All right, so here I have my lighter brown branches, trying to figure out placement on those. I end up just using a few of them. I just really only wanted the 2 shades of brown. So I'll tuck those in behind the skull as well. And this crow is stacked up on 3 layers of heavyweight black. So she is like a chipboard piece at this point. So I'll go ahead and glue her down. And I will cut off her tail feather that's overhanging. I do regret this. I wish I didn't do it, but it was a choice at the time. Okay, and the die set includes these raven silhouettes, so I thought I would go ahead and add those to fill in the space. And here's where I decide to add that cream color that's on the skull up to the Edgar Allan Poe title. I like the two-tone sentiment. I guess it's not really a sentiment, the title. And it brightened up the top of the card a bit. All right, so this time I made a brown book. When you are creating your book, I forgot to mention, the front and back cover you should cut from heavyweight cardstock, and the pages of the book you should use light cardstock. So I use 65-pound paper for the pages and 110-pound paper or 100-pound paper for my book covers. I do suggest lightweight for the pages just because it will be a little bit flatter and it will mail better. But I do suggest with these books to mail them in a bubble mailer if you do decide you want to send them out. So for this card, I'm going to use black gems. And if you like this card, I think you're really going to love the new Nevermore card kit that will be coming out in the next couple weeks. It has a very similar style to these 2 dies that I'm using. And we continued the Edgar Allan Poe theme with that one. So very excited about that. He was the main inspiration for the entire Halloween launch. I love the gothic, almost typewriter style that is Edgar Allan Poe. All right, so now I am paper piecing the elements for the inside of the card. This is the tombstone. This is the add-on that goes with Frankenstein. So there are a couple layers to that. And at the top of the tombstone, I thought it would be cute to add one of these small skulls. These are the skulls that go on the left and right side of that mirror that I've been using for my last 2 cards. So this is the card I decided not to use the mirror, but I will show you a raven book my mom made with the mirror. But this time I opted to just use the skulls, and I'm going to add one right on top of the tombstone, and I think that is very spooky. Love that. Here I just showed you all the dimension that you get when you start layering up the details. The RIP I also triple layered, so this was a pretty substantial piece by the time it was all finished. And there's even a layer that does the cobblestone pattern at the bottom of the tombstone, so that's what I'm adding here. And I will also add a raven to the top So this is the raven that is included in the accessory set. This raven is actually on a branch, so I did cut the branch off, and I'm just going to use the bird by itself. And then above the tombstone, I have the other, like the flying raven with the branch. And I am going to use the other crow that's on the branch as well. So that's going to fill the top of my scene. Giving these crows some white eyeballs, using my fine liner to give them some teeny tiny pupils. And then here's that crow that I cut the branch off, and he's just going to sit on top. Going to give him a white eye as well. And stick him on to the tombstone. So now I am ready to assemble. I'm going to glue the other tattered frame that I created earlier to the left side. And Nevermore is going to go at the top there. And then the rest of the page you can write a message on. And this was the first book where the page color is different from the actual book cover. So I did a dark brown book cover, and the pages I cut from a lightweight craft cardstock, and I love the two-toned effect. And because I did that, I was able to keep the original colors. So I kept the back dark brown and the frame with that craft color. And I just feel like the warm tones, the shades of brown just work together so beautifully. I love monochromatic cards lately, and my mom is the colorblind one, and she usually does these monochromatic cards. So for this last launch, we kind of switched things up, and I did these tone-on-tone card designs. But I did incorporate grays as well, but I mean, it's also a neutral, so I don't know if that really changes the color scheme a whole bunch. But I did go ahead and add a little graveyard border there on the very back. I glued it right onto the dark brown page in the back. And then I added my tombstone and my spooky tree. That's the same spooky tree I cut up for the front of the card, and it is from the Haunted House pop-up die set. I added those on the same level inside the book. I just added the tree to the left and the tombstone to the right. I was able to just stick those in without an acrylic stick. You can glue them to the actual edges of the shadow box, which is something I love about the book, is the pages themselves create the depth that you need in a shadow box. All right, then my two birds on branches will go there, right there on the top. Added one to the left, one to the right. And then I added that large skull, also included in the Raven accessory set. You get all of those beautiful skulls in that one set. It is definitely one of my favorites because skeletons and skulls are my Halloween decoration. I am obsessed with them. They are all over my house. So this is definitely one of my favorite designs. And I felt like I needed to bring some brightness to the top because those birds were, black. So I cut these clouds from the Dracula set. Remember those teeny tiny clouds that layer on his cape? Well, that's what these are. They're very small, but they added just enough brightness to the top, and I'm very happy with how that came out. Also added that black fence right there at the bottom, also from the Haunted House pop-up die set. Everything in the collection coordinates really well. I had another tiny skull that I decided to add to the top left, and I had another one of these flying bird silhouettes. So I'm going to add that as if it's about to land on the spooky tree. And that will finish up the inside scene, and I think that looks really cool. So here's the completed book. And here is the black and white book my mom made with the raven with the mirror on the inside. Okay, and then here's some close-ups of the raven design. And my final book is going to be the spell book, which is part of the bundle. And this is technically the only one that's not a classic horror novel, but I felt it was still very fitting for the Shadowbox book. So I will be using the spell book cover plate, the Pick Your Poison accessory set. This one makes an adorable little witch shelf. Also, we'll pull in the dancing witches, which are not technically in the bundle, but I thought they were perfect for this card design. And then also the Pumpkin Kitty die set, which is another die that's part of the new pop-up bundle, which that will be the next video that I share. The dancing witches are also in that bundle. But obviously, all the dies we bring out in every collection are great standalone dies, and they can be mixed and matched. So this card features a lot of different die sets, but I think it turned out really cute. So this is the shelf from the Pick Your Poison set, and this comes with this hanging shelf where you can hang herbs, a pile of bones, and a spider. I gave you the layering pieces to create the hooks and the string that's holding the bones together, and then I also gave you a plain shelf that you can decorate with a witch hat, a crystal ball. There was a couple different potion bottles, so you can customize your own witch shelf that way. So I'm going to use both of the shelves. This one I'm paper piecing the hanging elements, cut the hooks from silver. And this is another smaller set because, again, the cover plate for the spellbook is very detailed. So whenever there was a very, very detailed cover plate, I did make the accessory set a little bit more simplistic. And then if the cover plate was slightly more simplistic, I included more accessories. I will say, however, though, that the Pick Your Poison and the new Witch's Lair die set, those two coordinate beautifully if you want to go all in on a witch layer on the inside of your book, which if you saw my product showcase video, you would have seen a book like that. And if you haven't seen that video yet, I highly suggest that you do, because I will be giving away a $50 gift card in that video to one lucky commenter. And I do want to thank everyone for watching that video. It's already hit, I think, 1,000 views, which is not usual for my channel, so I'm very grateful for that. I am excited to see so many people love Halloween as much as I do. And don't worry if you are a fall person, we do have a surprise coming in September for fall. So yeah, and all I've been doing here is just paper piecing my different shelf accessories. So this is the crystal ball. I cut the eyeball from white, the base from gold, the eye color from green, and then the pupil from black. I also cut the eyelashes from black. And I was creating so many monochromatic cards in this video, I decided this one's going to be super bright colors. So I went for traditional purple, green, orange, and black. And here I'm just paper piecing all of my little potion bottles. I wanted this to be full of small decoration pieces. The detail is my style of card making. I love adding all those different elements. So I'm changing up the paper piecing for the witches. I decided to add a little bit of Copic coloring to their dresses to add a little bit of shading. And I did finish the paper piecing of them off camera. I did lose the footage of them, but do not fret. I have these witches in an upcoming video, so you'll see how they're paper pieced in that video. I also cut the cauldron from the spellbook cover plate twice, so I'm going to use one cauldron on the front and one on the inside. And I did use glitter paper on a couple elements on the witches and on the potion bottles. There's a little bit of sparkle mixed in to this entire card, which I love. So I am gluing now onto the cover of my book a purple and pink pattern paper. I bought this at Michael's, and it was just a background paper set. I really like it because it looks ink blended and I didn't have to do the work. Sometimes I do want to do the work, but this was the last card that I made for the entire showcase, and I'm just like, I know I'm not going to have enough time if I sit here and try to do this exact background. So I did cheat a bit, but I think it was worth it because it looks really nice. And then on top of this, I'm going to add the spiderweb cover plate from the spell book. Love this one as well. I think you can use it on a lot of Halloween designs. I am so excited for all of the illustrations in this collection. I truly think that a lot of these sets are so versatile. And working with this collection has put me in such a Halloween mood. Over the weekend after the launch, I have been decorating my house. I bought a couple things for Halloween because they're already selling stuff in the stores. But now I have to shift my mindset to Christmas already. So it's kind of interesting when you are designing in this industry. You have to work ahead. So your holidays are all way earlier than they should be. But that's totally fine because Christmas and Halloween I could celebrate all year round. Okay, so I wanted this to be a shaker card. I've never done a shaker card on a book before. And my preferred way of making shakers is either doing the flat shaker version where you wrap the acetate around, or if you stack die cuts instead of foam tape. There was no possible way I was going to get foam tape behind this teeny tiny frame anyway. So I think I stacked 5 heavyweight die cut black frames together to create the shadow box frame. And this is the label die from the spellbook cover plate. I nested the label inside the outer frame to create this skinny outline. And then I cut the actual label from white that will go in the center. I have another frame cut from black glitter cardstock, and I'm adding acetate behind this one. So this will close in my shaker. I'm first going to glue the stacked frame over the white label, and I chose the new mix called Witch Party, I believe. It has some pinks, purples, just the colors that match the background really nice, and there's like witch hats and stars inside of the mix. So I thought that would be perfect. All right, so I did decide to add one more stacked die cut. You really can put as many as you'd like. I think there is a total of 6. Once I add the acetate frame, that will be my 6th layer. And I did opt to go with more layers than normal because I'm using clay embellishments. I do suggest probably using sequins or something flatter, but I was just so excited to use this mix, so I just decided let's add another layer just to be sure. And I'm also spacing these apart so there's no overlapping where there could be a blockage. And once I'm happy with that, I'm going to glue the acetate frame on top, and you can see that mix has some black bat sequins, some ghosts. It is super cute. So I will link to the mix down below. We also have a ton of new mixes that are very cute. All right, and there is my shaker, my very first book shaker. Now in the center, I did struggle a bit because I wanted to use the spells and potions that are included in the cover plate, but I did not like this dark purple glitter that I chose. And whenever this happens, when I'm not liking a design, I usually step away. I either eat some food or I sleep on it. And so the next morning, I looked at the card and I'm like, you know what? I think it's the dark purple glitter. changed the words out for gold glitter, and I think it's just brighter. You can read it more, so I opted for that. On either side of the cauldron, I'm going to add a gray kitty from the Pumpkin Kitties die set. I'm going to add a moon to the center of my cauldron. I debated on using a moon from the actual sequin mix that's in the shaker, but I did end up choosing the gold glitter moon. I do end up regretting that later. So on the inside cauldron, I did use the clay moon instead. On the left side, I tucked in a couple leaves, like some herbs, and a potion bottle, as well as a skull. So I think that really sets the mood for the inside of the card. At the bottom, I added brews, elixirs, and charms, also included in the cover plate. Just a lot of little details that make it super cute. Cut those from white. And then we can move on to the inside. Oh, never mind. We're going to accent the front with some more of those clay sequins. Whenever I make a shaker, I very oftentimes do this. I like to pull in the shaker elements to the outside of the card just to tie everything together. And I totally took the entire color scheme inspiration from that sequin mix. And I'll go ahead and shake that up for you guys. Oh wait, maybe I don't. I'll show you guys at the end. So now let's go ahead and decorate the inside. So I have another pink and purple paper that'll go on the left. And this is an example of what I normally do with my books. I usually cover the entire black or whatever color the base is with some sort of paper. But 3 of the 4 designs I left at either the frame or the back page as is. All right, and then on the right side, I'm going to add even more color. This is from the same pattern paper mix I bought from Michaels. This is an orange to green ombre, which matches the colors on my witches perfectly. So I cut the shadow box frame, which then popped out the centerpiece. So the centerpiece I glued to the back, the frame I'm now gluing on top. And I have been getting so many requests to have a frame for the inside of the shadow box. And I have heard that there is one coming. And I agree. Like, it's going to be very useful to have a die that does that frame for me, because I have been having to make them myself with a wire grid trimmer. And sometimes it's a success and sometimes it's not. So I'm excited to have a frame as well. So on the left side, I'm going to add another frame with that little cat on the top. I think that's super cute. Cut that from gold glitter. I kind of regret not layering that up, but at this point I was like done layering that piece up. In the center, I'm going to add another white label. I'm going to stack it with this leftover black one. I had a ton of these after cutting all those frames, so I figured, you know, why not stack up the white one a little bit. That'll go right in the center. And on the left of that, I'm going to glue a pumpkin kitty. So here she is. Isn't that just so cute? I'm playing around with those purple glitter words. I didn't throw them away. I was like, maybe I can use them on the inside. I don't end up using them, but I try several times. They were already layered up, like they were really nice die cuts, but the color was just too dark. All right, so the pumpkin I layered up as well, but it was overlapping that stacked white piece, so I had to add a little bit of black at the bottom of the pumpkin to make it completely level. And now I have my witches, so I'm going to arrange them, see how they're looking, kind of just figuring out the composition here. I knew I wanted the cauldron in front of them, so that will most likely go there. And then I had to leave some room at the top for my shelves. And I knew I wanted 2 shelves that I had to squeeze in there. And those will be glued directly to the back of the card. Now these shelves are stacked 3 layers thick. So I had to layer up the pieces that are on the shelf as well, which I did not do beforehand. So you'll see as I'm assembling this, I had to add scraps of black behind to make everything level. So I'll add my crystal ball first, flip that around, and here you can see I add those die cut pieces, not die cut, just scrap paper. I'm a very detail oriented person, if you haven't figured that out. I just want everything perfectly level. Added a witch hat to the left side, and then in between I'm going to add a couple potion bottles. These are all from the Pick Your Poison set, and there are even more bottles in the witch's lair. All right, then I'm going to add this small purple one. And then on the shelf that has the hanging elements, all I did was add another potion bottle to the far right. I knew I wouldn't be able to really fit anything else having these stacked on top of each other. And if you look closely, you can see I have a small amount of sparkle on every element, which is very cute. I opted for an orange bottle, and I can go ahead and glue those directly to the back of the shadow box. So the only dimensional elements on the inside are those witches. Everything else is either glued to the front frame or to the very back. Here's the spells and potions again at the top, but I again just felt like it was too distracting. I am going to add a little kitty up there at the very end. And you can see I gave my pumpkin cat to the left a witch hat. That's the same hats that my dancing witches are wearing. So that was perfectly sized for the cats. And you can also use those hats for the dancing skeletons. All right, so I'll start with my purple witch. She's going to go to the right, a little bit further back. I think I glued her 2 rows from the back. And then my green witch will be glued 3 rows from the back. So she'll be slightly forward or closer to the frame, I guess. I did add an acrylic stick behind her dress because the only thing that was really glued was her tiny hand. So I wanted to make sure she was not going to pop off. This witch, it's her hand and her boot. But I'm also going to add a little bit of support with an acrylic stick on her as well. And I just tuck these behind their dresses, and you don't even see these. All right, then I just have my cauldron. And glue that directly onto the frame. And I had some leftover potion bottles. I thought, why not add those to the left and right side of the cauldron? Thought about adding the purple one with the cat over there. I'm taking a gray kitty from the Pumpkin Kitties die set. And this is one that is supposed to be a cat that's climbing a pumpkin, but instead I'm going to use this cat kind of climbing up the cauldron, taking a peek of what's brewing in there. So I glued her right to the edge of the cauldron. It does kind of look like she might be getting cooked a little bit, but we all know she's fine. All right, and then on the left, I thought that label at the top needed a black cat, of course. It's Halloween, so I added that. And then all I have to do here is add the eyes for the cauldron kitty. And there are tiny pupils. Again, you can just draw them in with the fine liner, but these were big enough. I just decided to use the paper pupils. I do wish I would have went with a fine liner on the cat's nose, but she was already glued in there. I didn't want to risk it, so. This one also has a little tail, so I'm having the tail wrap around the potion bottle down there. And this is a gray kitty, which matches my logo. And I do get questions all the time asking about the cat on my logo, and that is my childhood cat, Lucy. She will forever be my favorite pet I've ever had. And that is why I frequently put gray cats in my designs. Also, Siamese. You guys know why. I currently have Siamese, so. All right, I'm going to add some stars to the cauldron, and here I added that clay moon. That does glow in the dark too, which is cute. And then I did add a final cat up there at the very top. I wanted a little bit of black. I figured why not add her in. And that will finish off the final design. Here I'm trying to see if it'll glow, but it obviously won't in the light. Yeah, here's the front. Shaky shake. Very cute. And then the inside is just a big old party. I love all the colors. I was in dire need of color after the first 3 books. So here's another one my mom made with the spell book cover plate and the witch's lair and the pick your poison. So here I was just saying that all 3 coordinate really well together. And I'm going to bring back the 4 books I made in today's video. Here's the Edgar Allan Poe, The Raven, Frankenstein, and Dracula. So thank you all for watching this super long video. I did want to get it up before the sale ends. So we will leave it up until midnight tonight. And then the bundle goes down to 5% for quite a long time. So if you love this, I would grab it. It has definitely been the highlight of the weekend. And I appreciate you all for joining me, and I will see you in the next video. If you haven't yet already, please subscribe. All right, bye.